Hey, what is up, guys? Bluntcuts here. This is a Watcher of Realms video. Thanks so much for tuning into my channel. I appreciate it. I got the Valentine's Day limited Diaochan up on the screen right now. I am on the test server, and I have broken down exactly how her inspiration is going to compare to the other heroes in the game. Now, she is the newest inspiration hero in the game, although we did get a new one a couple weeks ago in Beelzebub, who was on Forerunner, in all fairness, for many months, but just made it to global servers recently. And then, of course, like 2 weeks later, after everybody spends all their summons on him, Diaochan appears. And, you know, I don't like the way that went down, but, you know, it is what it is. She is going to be really good. We say that unequivocally. However, I think when we start thinking about who's the best inspiration hero, we got to do some math. We got to break it down. I've got a spreadsheet I am going to show you. It's a couple of things that I do want to touch on before we go over and take a look at the numbers and compare her to the other inspiration heroes in the game. So just two things that I do want to touch on before we move over to the spreadsheet. The first is that her inspiration, unlike all of the other inspiration heroes in the game, her inspiration does not have a duration, meaning that anybody who is in her attack range is going to get 25% of her attack by default. Period, bar none. That is what is going to be given to anybody in there at any time, as long as she is in this Song of Sorrow state. She does. If you haven't watched my other video, I will have a link to the skills breakdown that I did of her in the description of this video. But just so you know, she is very similar to Ingrid in that her ultimate just switches her between two different states. There's a healing state and a buffing state. In the buffing state, she will always be providing inspiration to every ally in range. It is 25% of her base attack, which is very similar, the base attack, to Beelzebub and Dolores' base attack, slightly higher. Theirs both cap out around 2,600 base attack. Hers does cap out around 2,900 base attack at A2. That is A2 for all those heroes. You can subtract 300 from all those heroes. I guess 200 for Dolores to get the pre-A2 base attack for these heroes. But at the end of the day, you know, she's solid. She's solid. But we should keep in mind that while she may be giving the inspiration to these units all the time, it's not just about giving a steady bump of attack to units. It's about burst damage as well. And hers is going to be unquestionably lower than her counterparts. And the second thing that I do want to talk about is her exclusive artifact, something I didn't touch on during the skills breakdown that I did. She does have an exclusive artifact. It is going to be her best artifact, at least for her inspiration. If you are going to be using her as a buffer primarily, this is going to be the best one to use. It is a 5% increase to attack. It also is going to give you an extra 3% attack when you are in the Song of Sorrow, the buffing state. Now, one thing to note on this 3% does not rank up. It is 3% at the base copy. It is 3% at the level 25 copy. So you're not going to get any extra percentages on that by ranking this up. That kind of sucks in my mind. It would be nice if they would have given it some bonus. The healing bonus that only applies to her Serenade of Hope, her other form, does scale up as you level it up. So depending on your usage, this may be more worthwhile for some than for others. But as far as her inspiration, it's only going to give you that 5% plus the 3% when she is in the Song of Sorrow state. Of course, you are going to get the flat attack upgrade as you upgrade it from level 1 all the way up to level 25 as well. So with those two things in mind, let's go take a look at the spreadsheet. All right, guys, let's talk about the numbers. So if you did see my Beelzebub video, then you know what I did here. I basically just did the same test for Diaochan, and I tossed her numbers into the larger data set so I could compare her to the previous results that I had. If you didn't watch that video, essentially what I did was take a Brokir in a damage set, high crit damage, relatively low attack, and then tried to gauge how much the inspiration provided from these different heroes did impact his single hit damage. And so that's what you're seeing on the screen right here. When I did this test before, Dolores at A5 was the highest per hit damage increase during her inspiration versus the other heroes. Now, Beelzebub A2 Plus did provide close to the same amount, 99.8% of that amount, so very, very close, but was still edged out by Dolores slightly to the tune of, what is that, 105 damage. Now, Diaochan, on the other hand, did significantly less. At A0 and A1, she was doing 58.92% of A5 Dolores' increase, and then at A2 plus, she was doing 62% of the increase provided by Dolores. Now, let's go take a look at with Legendary Lords, as that stat increase is going to shake things up a little bit. Unfortunately, the shakeup does not benefit Diaochan, who, while Dolores is still the queen, the top of the heap for this test, even with a Legendary Lord involved, Diaochan falls behind a little bit here at 57.18% of that damage, of Dolores' damage, at A0 and A1, and Diaochan at A2 plus was doing 60.34% of the damage that was provided via Dolores' inspiration. Now, this is not the only thing that matters, obviously, but as far as maximum burst damage, Dolores is going to provide you with the highest damage increase in that inspiration window. But Diaochan doesn't really have an inspiration window. Anytime she is deployed, that is the inspiration window, and that does need to be taken into account, because while the highs may not be so high, the lows should not be so low with Diaochan either. So let's go take a look as I incorporate her into the uptime comparison that I did in my previous test. All right, guys, so this is my uptime sheet where I've tried to account for how much time the inspiration buff was up. I did do this test, of course, when I did Beelzebub in the past, and Beelzebub at A3 plus, when he does get that massive rage regen increase, thereby increasing the uptime of his buff massively, did come out as the top dog. He was the one that was providing the highest average increase versus the other heroes here. Now, Diaochan has usurped him. Now, this is, keep in mind, with no rage regen, so this is without Elowen. This is going to be most pertinent to small group content. So I'm talking about Arena, I'm talking about Guild Wars, things like that. I guess potentially codexes. Depends on whether or not it's a codex that you want to bring Elowen into. However, Diaochan was providing the highest average increase at that point. Now, again, the highs are not going to be as high, but the lows aren't going to be as low. Diaochan at A0 and A1 was a 7.34% increase in average bonus provided over Beelzebub A3. Now, Diaochan at A2 plus did provide a 13% increase over Beelzebub A3 plus. Now, this is a pretty big increase overall, and if you are in a small group fight where you're not concerned about having a burst window, like there's some kind of instance, like I'm thinking like codexes, where you've got a small window where you have a damage increase active on the boss or something like that, maybe Arbiter Frost after you pop one of those ice balls or whatever. I'm thinking of Lord of Styx, where you bust one of those shields and you get a short-term damage boost. If you do not have a damage window, then she is unequivocally going to be the best inspiration hero for you. Now, again, assuming that you aren't bringing Elowen. So let's go take a look at what it looks like when we add Elowen into the mix. So this is where Diaochan does fall off a little bit. And it's not that she's bad by any means, because she is still nearly top of the heap, but she does not compare to Beelzebub A3 plus at this point as far as the average attack provided. And of course, she doesn't have the burst potential of any of these other heroes, regardless of whatever her awakening level is. So that all needs to be taken into account. But Beelzebub A3 plus was still the top dog when we had Elowen in the mix, and it increased his rage regen. He was able to recharge, basically get back to his ultimate with only 12 seconds in between his ults. And that is just hard to compete with, especially when he is almost providing a Dolores level boost to the heroes that he is buffing. So looking at the numbers here, Diaochan A0 and A1 did 91.24% of the Beelzebub A3 boost. Diaochan at A2 did 96.1% of the Beelzebub A3 boost. So not a ton less, but it was less than the top dog here. For reference, Dolores was, in the previous test, the second highest at 92% of Beelzebub A3 pluses. So basically what we're looking at is Diaochan at A0 and A1 is going to provide the same average attack as Dolores A5, almost, slightly less, like 0.75% less than A5 Dolores. But at A2 plus, she is providing about 4% more than what Dolores A5 is. So, very similar, but not a huge difference. Well, there you have it, guys. One last thing that I do want to mention before I get out of here is that I did this testing in such a way that I controlled for the penetration buff that Diaochan does provide. She does provide a 20% penetration to defense and magic resist to 2 allies when she is below A3, and then at A3, that expands and she can provide it to 3 different allies. Now, when I did have the penetration buff on Broke here, he was getting about a 15% damage increase versus what he was seeing without Diaochan. So Obviously, you got to consider this hero holistically. It's not just the inspiration that she is providing, but I did want to compare the inspiration and do an apples to apples comparison. So even though she does not provide quite as much of a boost purely by her inspiration as, say, Beelzebub A3+ in this instance, in this one instance where you do have Elowen in the mix, that does not mean that she's worse. It does not, in my opinion, mean that she's worse. I do think that ultimately she is going to be somebody that it's going to have her niche. I just don't know that she is necessarily going to be automatic. We're bringing her everywhere. It's going to depend on but long-term fights where you don't have to worry about stacking damage in a particular burst window. Now, I don't know where in the game that really is right now is the unfortunate part, right? I think, if we're talking Guild Boss 2, the intermission window in between phases when you kill a phase and then you get that damage bonus, that is about 20 seconds long, and that is perfect for all of these high-end inspiration buffs on all the other heroes except for Diaochan. Codexes, where we are being competitive, you want burst windows, right? You want to do more damage at once. She's not going to excel at that. She's more damage on average. She's not more damage all at once. And so even arenas, I think that in arena, having higher average damage, that can certainly be beneficial. But you were still going to be trumped by somebody using one of these other heroes, at least while their buff is active. So, take of that what you may. Tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. I think she's a cool hero. I think she's really, really good. I do think that there's going to be a lot of really great uses for her. I just don't know that she's like head and shoulders above everybody else. But, time will tell on that. We'll see how it actually manifests in game when everybody gets there, when everybody has awakenings on her, that kind of thing. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I do hope this was helpful. I found it interesting. I hope you did too. Please do click that thumbs up button. Sub to my channel if you are not subscribed already. I will catch you all next time.